Welcome to Conspiracy Files with Zoe Parker. I'm your host, Zoe Parker, and in today's episode, we journey into one of the oldest and most enigmatic mysteries on Earth, the Anunnaki. Were they simply mythological gods worshipped by the ancient Sumerians, or something far more powerful and extraterrestrial? As ancient tablets tell a story of beings who descended from the skies, questions arise that challenge everything we think we know about history, creation, and humanity's origins. In the ancient land of Mesopotamia, nestled between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, the earliest known civilization emerged. The Sumerians, flourishing as early as 5,000 years before the modern era, left behind a vast and intricate legacy of cuneiform tablets, religious texts, and detailed mythologies. Central to their belief system were the Anunnaki, powerful beings said to have descended from the heavens. According to surviving Sumerian records, the Anunnaki were not merely gods in the symbolic or spiritual sense. They were described as flesh and blood rulers, with names, personalities, rivalries, and specific domains of authority. Their influence, it is said, shaped the very foundation of human civilization. The name Anunnaki is believed to mean those who came from the heavens, or more literally, those of royal blood from heaven. These beings appeared in the creation myths of multiple Mesopotamian cultures, including the Akkadians, Assyrians, and Babylonians. One of the most significant texts, known as the Enuma Elish, outlines the Babylonian creation story and references powerful sky beings involved in the formation of the earth and mankind. The Atrahasis epic, a text even older than the Enuma Elish, describes how the Anunnaki needed a labor force to carry out their work on Earth. In this version, humans were created as a servant species to lighten the burden of the gods. This portrayal of divine beings crafting mankind as a utility has stirred fascination and debate for decades. Unlike the benevolent creators of many later religions, the Anunnaki were portrayed as hierarchical, demanding, and driven by personal motives. They were not omnipotent or omniscient. Instead, they behaved much like human rulers, political, divided, and often at odds with one another. These traits led some researchers to question whether the stories might have originated from real events, preserved and mythologized over millennia. In many depictions, the Anunnaki are shown wearing elaborate horned helmets, carrying tools or weapons, and emerging from flying craft or gateways to the sky. Temples and ziggurats were constructed in their honor, massive stone structures aligned with celestial events. These were not mere symbolic places of worship. They were believed to be literal homes and landing platforms for these sky gods. The Sumerians claimed their knowledge of astronomy, agriculture, and mathematics came directly from the Anunnaki. As modern historians examined the vast collection of Sumerian writings uncovered in the 19th and 20th centuries, some began to raise an unsettling possibility. Could the stories be more than mythology? Were these not just metaphors, but records? If the Anunnaki were real, who or what were they? And why did their legacy spread so far, echoed in other ancient cultures under different names? These ancient records laid the groundwork for one of the most controversial theories of the 20th century, that the Anunnaki may not have been deities at all, but visitors from another planet. Beings who came to Earth with purpose, power, and a plan that directly involved humanity. One of the most prominent figures associated with the revival of the Anunnaki theory is Zecharia Sitchin, a researcher and author whose work continues to polarize scholars, scientists, and conspiracy theorists alike. In the mid-1970s, Sitchin published a book titled The 12th Planet, which offered a radical reinterpretation of ancient Sumerian texts. He claimed that the Anunnaki were not gods at all, but an advanced extraterrestrial species from a distant planet known as Nibiru, a mysterious celestial body that allegedly enters Earth's orbit once every 3,600 years. According to Sitchin, the Anunnaki arrived on Earth hundreds of thousands of years ago in search of one critical resource, gold. Not for wealth, but for survival. He proposed that the Anunnaki needed gold to stabilize the atmosphere of their home planet. Earth's rich gold reserves made it a prime target, and ancient Mesopotamia, particularly the region of modern-day Iraq, became their base of operations. Sitchin interpreted ancient texts to suggest that upon arriving, The Anunnaki initially carried out the labor of mining themselves, but the task proved too difficult and time-consuming. This led, he claimed, to a pivotal moment in human history: the genetic creation of Homo sapiens. By combining their own genetic material with that of early hominids, the Anunnaki allegedly engineered the first humans as a labor force. This new species was designed to be strong, intelligent, and obedient, yet limited enough to remain subservient. In this version of events, figures like Enki and Enlil, names that appear frequently in Sumerian mythology, were not divine archetypes, but actual Anunnaki leaders with conflicting ideologies. Enki, often seen as a benefactor of humanity, was said to have supported human advancement and freedom. Enlil, on the other hand, was portrayed as strict and authoritarian, favoring control and limitation over human autonomy. Sitchin's interpretation of ancient texts painted a picture of humanity as a genetically modified servant race caught in the middle of an alien power struggle. He suggested that many of the earliest myths, including the Garden of Eden, the Great Flood, and even the Tower of Babel, were distortions or memories of real events involving the Anunnaki. According to this theory, when the Anunnaki left Earth, they took their knowledge and influence with them, leaving behind scattered ruins, encoded symbolism, and half-remembered legends. Critics accused Sitchin of mistranslating texts and bending interpretations to fit a predetermined narrative. However, his work resonated with a growing number of people who saw parallels across cultures: sky gods descending in fire, beings of immense stature and knowledge, and tales of divine creation through unnatural means. Sitchin's ideas helped popularize the concept of ancient astronauts, and his theories continue to inspire documentaries, books, and online communities that believe humanity's past may be far stranger than we are taught. Regardless of one's stance, Sitchin's work sparked a profound shift in how the Anunnaki are viewed, not just as ancient gods, but as key players in a hidden history that challenges the mainstream timeline of human origin. The claims surrounding the Anunnaki are not built on imagination alone. Several pieces of ancient evidence have fueled the idea that these beings may have been more than myth. Among the most frequently cited sources are the thousands of clay tablets discovered in the ruins of ancient Sumer, particularly those found in the city of Nippur. These tablets, written in cuneiform script, are among the oldest written records known to humanity. Some of them detail complex cosmologies, genealogies of gods, and accounts of advanced knowledge that seem far beyond the capabilities of early human societies. One recurring detail in these texts is the idea that kingship, the right to rule, was not invented by humans, but was lowered from heaven. This phrase appears repeatedly, suggesting that divine or extraterrestrial authority was considered the origin of all political and social structure. If the Anunnaki were indeed visitors from another world, their gift of kingship could be interpreted as a means of maintaining control over a genetically engineered population. By installing human rulers with divine legitimacy, they would not need to govern directly, only to oversee from behind the scenes. Another important artifact often cited by proponents of the Anunnaki theory is the Sumerian king list. This ancient record lists the reigns of kings in Mesopotamia stretching back thousands of years. Strangely, many of the earliest kings are said to have ruled for impossibly long durations, tens of thousands of years in some cases. These exaggerated lifespans have led some to suggest that the earliest rulers were not human at all, but members of the Anunnaki themselves, who only later handed over power to mortal humans. There are also curious depictions in ancient art. Stone carvings, cylinder seals, and wall reliefs show figures who appear much larger than humans, often wearing elaborate headdresses and holding strange objects that resemble modern tools or technology. Some carvings seem to depict winged beings hovering above the ground or emerging from star-like portals. In one famous seal, often referred to as the solar system seal, a cluster of celestial bodies is shown in a formation that resembles our known solar system, including a mysterious additional planet beyond Pluto. To those who believe in the Nibiru hypothesis, this is seen as visual proof that the Sumerians had knowledge of planets they could not possibly have observed without advanced tools. Then there is the issue of ancient engineering. Ziggurats, vast temple towers constructed in honor of the gods, were built with mathematical precision and often aligned with astronomical phenomena. Their design appears to serve more than ceremonial purposes. Some theorists argue that these structures functioned as energy centers or even landing platforms for aerial craft. They point to the repetitive use of similar designs across great distances and cultures, suggesting a shared origin or instruction. In addition, ancient texts make reference to something called mi, sacred decrees or powers that governed aspects of civilization. These were not merely ideas, but tangible items that could be given or stolen. Some scholars translate mi as laws or cultural norms, but alternative researchers interpret them as advanced technology, possibly encoded information or devices that carried knowledge from the Anunnaki. All of this evidence remains open to interpretation, but when considered together, from the written records and strange iconography to the architectural marvels and symbolic artifacts, a pattern begins to emerge. A pattern that suggests the people of ancient Sumer were recording something they believed to be real. Whether their stories describe gods, extraterrestrials, or something in between, the consistency and complexity of their accounts remain one of history's great enigmas. Examining the Anunnaki theory requires more than recounting legends or analyzing ancient artifacts. It demands a closer look at the evidence itself and the way it has been interpreted. One of the most critical components of the theory is the translation of the cuneiform texts. These tablets, many of which were excavated in the 19th and early 20th centuries, have been studied extensively by scholars. The standard academic interpretation views them as symbolic religious documents, mythopoetic stories created to explain natural forces and social structures. But others argue that these translations may overlook a literal truth. Critics of the conventional approach point out that ancient cultures often did not separate religion, history, and science the way modern societies do. To them, a story about gods descending from the sky may not have been metaphorical, but a record of actual events. The descriptions of flying chariots, fiery clouds, and celestial battles are common across many ancient cultures, and some researchers suggest they represent technological phenomena misunderstood by early humans. Supporters of the ancient astronaut hypothesis propose that many of the texts contain precise information that is difficult to explain within the framework of primitive myth. One such example is the account of the Great Flood. The Sumerian version, known as the Epic of Ziusudra, predates the biblical story of Noah by centuries. In this narrative, the god Enki warns a human of an impending deluge meant to wipe out mankind. The man builds a large boat and survives the disaster, repopulating the earth afterward. This story, remarkably similar in structure and detail to the version found in the Book of Genesis, raises questions about its origin. Could these flood myths stem from a shared memory of a global catastrophe? And if the Anunnaki were behind the event, what was the reason for such drastic action? Another point of contention lies in the technological descriptions embedded in ancient stories. The god Enki is often described as manipulating clay and breath to create mankind, a process that some interpret as symbolic of genetic engineering. References to breath of life and essence may hint at a transfer of DNA or advanced biological manipulation. When read through a modern lens, the language of creation takes on a different character, one that aligns more with laboratory procedure than spiritual metaphor. There are also references to tools or devices that seem to defy the understanding of the time. Tablets describe the Anunnaki using malamu, a radiant aura or energy field that inspired awe and fear. Some researchers compare this to electromagnetic fields or artificial light. The Anunnaki are said to have traveled in shems, sometimes translated as spaceships or aerial vehicles. These craft allegedly moved between Earth and the heavens, sometimes described in ways that echo propulsion and flight. One controversial object often connected to these ideas is the Bag of the Gods, a handbag-shaped item shown in the hands of Anunnaki figures across Mesopotamian, Assyrian, and even Mesoamerican art. Some believe it may represent a device, possibly used for terraforming, measuring, or storing knowledge. Its consistent appearance across unrelated civilizations remains unexplained by mainstream archaeology. Despite the skepticism, the evidence continues to draw attention. While mainstream scholars caution against overreaching interpretations, the sheer volume of anomalous details in the texts and artwork invites further inquiry. Are we seeing the residue of misunderstood gods? Or are we looking at a fragmented record of something far more advanced and possibly extraterrestrial that shaped the early chapters of human civilization? For every claim that elevates the Anunnaki to the status of ancient astronauts, there exists a counter-argument grounded in conventional history and linguistics. Scholars specializing in Mesopotamian studies maintain that the Anunnaki were purely mythological figures, born from the imagination of a culture attempting to explain the forces of nature, the structure of society, and the mysteries of life. They argue that interpreting ancient religious texts as historical fact misrepresents both the intention and the context of the civilizations that produced them. One of the most common critiques of the Anunnaki theory concerns the translation of Sumerian and Akkadian texts. Language experts emphasize that cuneiform script is highly contextual, with meaning shifting depending on usage, syntax, and regional dialect. Zecharia Sitchin, the theorist who popularized the extraterrestrial Anunnaki narrative, was not formally trained in Sumerian or Assyriology. Linguists have repeatedly pointed out inconsistencies and inaccuracies in his translations. For example, the term Anunnaki itself is more accurately translated as princely seed or offspring of Anu, referring to divine lineage rather than extraterrestrial visitors. Mainstream scholars also reject the notion of Nibiru as a real undiscovered planet. The idea of a rogue celestial body entering Earth's orbit every 3,600 years is not supported by astronomical data. Scientists argue that if such a planet existed, its gravitational impact would be easily detectable through the movement of known planets. NASA has stated that no credible evidence supports the existence of Nibiru, and the recurring claims of its arrival have consistently failed to materialize. The Sumerian king list, often cited for its mention of impossibly long reigns, is also viewed differently by academics. Rather than being a literal record of kings who ruled for tens of thousands of years, the exaggerated durations are understood as symbolic, designed to emphasize the greatness or divine favor of a ruler. Similar exaggerations appear in early Chinese and Egyptian king lists. From a historical standpoint, these are literary devices, not chronologies. As for the solar system seal and the mysterious bag of the gods, archaeologists caution against drawing conclusions based on visual resemblance. What may appear to modern eyes as depictions of planets or devices may have had entirely different meanings to the people who created them. The so-called solar system seal, for example, has been interpreted by experts as a symbolic diagram rather than a literal map of the cosmos. Likewise, the handbag motif appears across different cultures, likely due to its symbolic association with wisdom, ritual, or divine authority, not because it was a piece of alien technology. Skeptics also point to the lack of physical evidence. No recovered artifacts, DNA samples, or alien technologies have been found that would substantiate the Anunnaki hypothesis. The ruins of Sumerian cities, though impressive, show no signs of technology beyond what was achievable by ancient human engineering. The astronomical alignments of temples and ziggurats, while remarkable, can be explained through careful observation and geometry, skills well within the capabilities of advanced ancient cultures. Ultimately, the academic community warns that when modern people project contemporary ideas, such as space travel, genetics, or machines, onto ancient texts, they risk distorting historical truth. While the Anunnaki remain fascinating as mythological figures, mainstream researchers caution against turning them into literal beings, based solely on interpretations that lack scholarly consensus. This perspective insists that the enduring mystery of the Anunnaki lies not in hidden alien secrets, but in the complexity of human imagination and the rich legacy of one of the world's earliest civilizations. Beyond the academic debate, the Anunnaki theory opens a doorway to deeper questions about humanity's place in the universe and the origins of civilization itself. If the ancient Sumerians truly believed they were guided, governed, or even engineered by beings from the sky, then what does that say about the foundation of human consciousness? The idea that early societies were shaped by external intelligence, whether divine, extraterrestrial, or interdimensional, reshapes how we interpret the rise of human knowledge, authority, and spiritual awareness. The psychological implications are significant. Throughout history, civilizations across the world have described interactions with gods, beings of light, or travelers from the stars. The Anunnaki are just one example in a global pattern of sky origin myths. Ancient Egypt told stories of Thoth and Osiris descending from beyond. The Dogon tribe of Mali described a star system invisible to the naked eye, claiming knowledge given to them by beings from Sirius. In South America, legends of Viracocha, the bearded sky god, mirror tales found on the other side of the world. Whether coincidence or common memory, these parallels suggest that the Anunnaki may be part of a much broader mythos that transcends time and geography. Those who explore the Anunnaki narrative from a symbolic or metaphysical angle often view it not just as history, but as a kind of encoded truth, a reflection of archetypes that still shape our subconscious mind. The idea of powerful creators, of conflict between knowledge and control, and of humanity caught between forces it does not fully understand. These themes recur in religious texts, folklore, and even modern science fiction. The Anunnaki, in this sense, are not only possible ancient rulers, but also metaphors for control, rebellion, and the search for truth. From a political and cultural standpoint, the theory also speaks to deeper societal fears. If humanity was created to serve, are we still serving unseen masters today? Some researchers suggest that modern systems of governance, surveillance, and global finance reflect a continuation of the original Anunnaki model: control through hierarchy, obedience, and selective knowledge. The suggestion is not always literal, but symbolic. Ancient rulers claimed divine right from the heavens. Today, institutions exert power through systems too complex for most people to question. In both cases, the narrative centers on external authority over human life. There is also a psychological resonance in the idea that humanity was not alone in its infancy. For many, the possibility that advanced beings visited Earth long ago and influenced our trajectory brings a strange comfort or a deep unease. It implies that we are part of something much larger, perhaps even engineered for a purpose we have yet to understand. Whether seen as benevolent guides, indifferent engineers, or oppressive masters, the Anunnaki awaken the fundamental question: what if we were never fully in control of our destiny? The implications extend beyond religion or archaeology. They touch on our deepest assumptions about freedom, identity, and purpose. Even without concrete proof, the narrative challenges the conventional story of human development. It invites us to imagine a past that is not linear, but layered. A past where the gods walked among us, not as spirits, but as beings who came from the stars and left behind a mystery we are still trying to solve. The presence of the Anunnaki in popular culture and alternative media has steadily grown over the past few decades. Once confined to obscure academic texts and fringe publications, the theory has now made its way into documentaries, novels, video games, and viral internet forums. What began as a controversial reinterpretation of ancient texts has evolved into a modern mythology, one that reflects humanity's ongoing fascination with the idea of powerful, hidden forces shaping our reality. Television programs like Ancient Aliens have introduced millions to the concept of ancient astronauts, frequently citing the Anunnaki as one of the most compelling examples. These portrayals often blend speculative science, historical anomalies, and philosophical questions, making the theory accessible to a wide audience. While critics argue that this media coverage blurs the line between entertainment and scholarship, its cultural impact is undeniable. The Anunnaki have become symbols of forbidden knowledge, buried truth, and the search for answers outside mainstream authority. In literature, authors have reimagined the Anunnaki as heroes, villains, or misunderstood teachers. Science fiction novels depict them as intergalactic travelers, galactic royalty, or architects of civilizations long forgotten. In these stories, they are not just relics of the past, but active players in humanity's future. This narrative shift from ancient gods to cosmic beings serves to deepen their mystique and adaptability, allowing them to evolve alongside modern ideas about space, technology, and consciousness. On digital platforms, the conversation surrounding the Anunnaki has exploded. Online communities debate translations of ancient tablets, compare flood myths across cultures, and analyze symbolism in art and architecture. For some, the Anunnaki are not just a topic of interest, but a lens through which to view the world. Threads on forums speculate about secret bloodlines, hidden knowledge passed down through elites, and connections between the Anunnaki and modern power structures. Videos claiming to uncover suppressed truths often receive millions of views, and entire channels are dedicated to unpacking the alleged legacy of these sky beings. Meanwhile, the theory has also shaped new religious and spiritual movements. Some groups believe the Anunnaki will return, ushering in a new era of human enlightenment or control. Others adopt the Anunnaki narrative as part of a broader belief system about the origins of humanity and our cosmic role. While these beliefs vary widely, they all center around a shared theme: that ancient knowledge, long buried or deliberately hidden, holds the key to understanding who we are and where we come from. Mainstream media has responded in various ways, sometimes mocking the theory, other times cautiously entertaining its implications. Films and television often reference ancient gods with advanced technology, subtly echoing the Anunnaki mythos even without naming it directly. These references reinforce the idea that the boundaries between myth, religion, and science fiction are far more porous than they seem. Whether viewed as literal truth, metaphor, or something in between, the Anunnaki have become embedded in our collective imagination. Their story resonates because it offers an alternative narrative, one that questions authority, challenges historical dogma, and suggests that humanity's past may be far more complex than we are led to believe. As the media landscape continues to evolve, so too does the legend of the Anunnaki, growing not just as a theory, but as a cultural force all its own. As interest in the Anunnaki has expanded, so too have the speculative theories surrounding them. These fringe interpretations often move beyond ancient texts and archaeological sites, venturing into metaphysics, interdimensional travel, and the manipulation of human consciousness. While mainstream researchers dismiss these ideas as fantasy, their widespread appeal suggests a growing hunger for explanations that stretch beyond conventional science and history. One recurring fringe theory posits that the Anunnaki were not merely extraterrestrials in the traditional sense, but interdimensional beings, entities capable of moving between physical and non-physical realms. This concept draws from a mix of ancient descriptions, quantum theory, and modern reports of strange phenomena such as UFO sightings, missing time, and paranormal encounters. If the Anunnaki could operate across dimensions, it could explain why they seemingly vanished from the historical record. Yet their influence appears embedded across unrelated cultures and religions. Some theorists link the Anunnaki to reptilian beings, a controversial idea that proposes certain bloodlines on Earth descend from hybrid unions between humans and non-human entities. According to this view, elite families and powerful institutions maintain control through inherited influence, tracing their origins back to these ancient gods. While lacking hard evidence, this theory has gained traction in conspiracy circles as a metaphor for corruption, secrecy, and global manipulation. There are also claims that the Anunnaki are not gone, but still present, hidden, watching, or operating through human proxies. In this version of the story, humanity remains under a kind of spiritual or energetic control, with the Anunnaki influencing our development through subtle means. These interpretations often overlap with theories about artificial intelligence, mind control, and mass surveillance, suggesting that modern technologies may be the continuation of ancient systems of dominance. Others argue that the return of Nibiru, the alleged home planet of the Anunnaki, is imminent. Predictions of catastrophic alignments, magnetic shifts, or even direct contact resurface frequently in online spaces. These prophecies are often vague and unfulfilled, yet they persist, perhaps not because of their accuracy, but because they tap into something deeper: the sense that history is incomplete and that something hidden is about to be revealed. A more metaphysical angle proposes that the Anunnaki were never physical beings at all, but archetypes within the human psyche. In this view, Enki and Enlil are symbolic of opposing forces within consciousness: freedom and control, creation and destruction. The myth becomes a mirror, reflecting internal struggles and evolutionary leaps in awareness. For adherents of this perspective, the Anunnaki story is not about aliens, but about awakening, a call to remember something ancient and buried within ourselves. These interpretations are difficult to prove, and by design, they defy verification. Yet their persistence across decades, cultures, and platforms speaks to their psychological and cultural power. Whether they are literal histories, symbolic truths, or elaborate fictions, the stories surrounding the Anunnaki continue to evolve. They offer an open-ended mystery that resists closure, and perhaps that is why they remain so compelling. In a world saturated with information and starved for meaning, the Anunnaki provide both a question and a challenge. What if the truth has always been hidden in plain sight? The story of the Anunnaki remains one of the most enduring and provocative mysteries in all of human history. Whether viewed through the lens of mythology, ancient alien theory, or symbolic archetype, their legacy continues to raise questions that challenge the boundaries of what we think we know. The Sumerians, one of the most advanced civilizations of the ancient world, did not describe their gods in vague or abstract terms. They recorded detailed narratives, genealogies, and instructions, as though they were documenting real events and interactions. Their writings formed the foundation of Mesopotamian religion, culture, and science, and yet they consistently pointed back to the same mysterious figures, beings from the heavens, bearing knowledge and power. For those who accept the traditional academic view, the Anunnaki were literary devices, imagined deities created to explain the world around them. Their stories were metaphor, their temples symbolic. But for others, the consistency of these accounts, the sophistication of Sumerian knowledge, and the parallels in other cultures suggest something more profound, that these gods may have been visitors, influencers, or architects of civilization itself. From the towering ziggurats aligned with the stars to the myths of human creation through manipulation of clay and essence, the evidence invites interpretation. And depending on how one chooses to read the ancient texts, that interpretation can shift dramatically. Are we the result of divine evolution, natural development, or deliberate engineering by a race not of this earth? Modern theories surrounding the Anunnaki reflect the same themes humanity has grappled with for millennia: our desire to understand where we come from, who created us, and whether we are truly free. These are not just historical questions, but existential ones. And the Anunnaki, whether real or symbolic, sit at the heart of that mystery. In recent years, the growing distrust in institutions, the erosion of traditional narratives, and the explosion of digital media have created a fertile ground for alternative histories. The Anunnaki narrative fits squarely within this landscape, offering a story that is at once ancient and futuristic, terrifying and liberating. It provides an origin myth that breaks with orthodoxy and opens the door to vast possibilities of extraterrestrial contact, lost knowledge, and suppressed truths. But perhaps the greatest power of the Anunnaki story is not in whether it is true or false, but in its ability to make us look deeper, to question the stories we are told, to seek out forgotten texts and listen closely to ancient voices, and to remember that history, like mythology, is not always what it seems. Thanks for listening. This has been another episode of Conspiracy Files with Zoe Parker. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to follow us wherever you get your podcasts. And if you'd like to support the show and unlock bonus content, subscribe to the Forbidden Knowledge Network on Patreon. Subscribe now.